Joining me now is Carol Swain, former professor at Vanderbilt and Princeton Universities and author of Be the People, A Call to Reclaim America's Faith and Promise. Also here is Jeremy Hunt, West Point grad and Army veteran. Carol, let's start with you. Did you ever think, given everything you've seen in your lifetime, that in the year 2021, we would have activities on campus segregated by race, including at Ivy League schools and your old place of work, Princeton University?
Well, they have been having segregated activities for minority students for a number of years. I never thought I would see a time when it would be so widely accepted that we would reject the integration model and the national motto, E pluribus unum, out of many one. That is what is shocking to me. And the segregation we see pushed by the Democrats and by the leftists, to me, it violates the entire civil rights vision as well as civil rights laws, and in some cases, the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. There are lawsuits waiting to happen.
Well, Jeremy, there was a very disturbing moment over the last few weeks for so many Americans, I think, who believed our military leaders they're not political. They're here to serve the country, part of a fighting force, leading a fighting force. But now we've seen that that's changing. The U.S. Army sent out a tweet saying that extremism can tear apart cohesive teams. Colonel Timothy Holman is the Army's chief diversity officer, and his aim is clear. Do what he can to help open up a path for future Army leaders and make the force as diverse as the nation it defends. Jeremy, I think a diverse military is something we have, thank goodness. But a chief diversity officer?
Well, look, let me just start by saying that the Army has a long history of leading the way on issues of race. I mean, back in 1948, well before the rest of the country, the Army was the first to desegregate, the armed forces rather, as a whole, desegregated. And so we've always been forward on that. I just left my time in service, and I can tell you the spirit is one team, one fight. So you might be wondering, why is the Biden administration suddenly panicking about culture in the military? And you have to wonder do you think that maybe the word diversity is just a code word to usher in progressive policies? Because it kind of legitimizes whatever these Washington bureaucrats want to enact in institutions, and the military is no different. And so we have to be aware of that and kind of see what's actually happening behind the curtain.
Well, Chief Diversity Officer in the military, and Carol, Princeton University, I'm not trying to pick on Princeton because this is happening in corporations. Obviously, as Jeremy just said, we see it now infecting the military. But again, at this theological cemetery, there's mandatory and segregated training sessions. And this really disturbing moment, watch.
It's a white-only space. It creates a space where we can really grapple with our whiteness and how we've been socialized in a way that does not harm our colleagues and co-students of color.
BIPOC-only space. Now, this is a space that's open to students who identify as Black, Indigenous, or as a person of color. As people of color, we are not a monolith, so we come to this work with a wide range of experiences.
Well, at least I liked her last comment. We're not a monolith. That's pretty good. Carol, but white spaces and biopic spaces and...
Well, what's really sad is that theological seminary trains people for the ministry, and the Christian church should be leading the way on race. And the very idea that they would turn to critical race theory and secular humanism, which is a rejection of God, that is absurd. And critical race theory and the racist agenda of diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's also infected churches. And many pastors have no idea what they're dealing with because they get blown away by the code words of social justice.
Jeremy, I want to play what Don Lemon said over at CNN about Americans on The View just yesterday. Watch.
We thought that maybe we were in a post-racial era, and we weren't. We were living a lie, and Donald Trump, I hate to say it, he showed us the truth, and he showed us who our neighbors, many of our neighbors, are.
Jeremy, again, if America is systemically racist, the whole thing has to come down or be radically altered, including the military.
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing, unfortunately, today is yet another page out of Jim Crow's playbook. What we're seeing now is that with new injustices and new segregation, as you talked about, and new racism and prejudice today, that somehow that can atone for the past. And that is a lie. While it's important to acknowledge the past, you cannot atone for it by creating new inequalities today. And unfortunately, every civilization that has ever bought that lie, it has ultimately destroyed them. And so we can't allow that here in this country. We have to stand for truth. And it's just like I'll be telling my daughter this soon, look, two wrongs don't make a right. Only light can drive out darkness. And so that's the important message that we have to keep championing for the next generation.
Fantastic conversation. Carol and Jeremy, thank you both so much.